We're about to crush up and make some apple cider. This will be the first time that press has been used since I was a small boy, and I get to introduce it to my small boy. So some great family kind of connections going on here. Not a whole lot that goes into apple pressing. I'm doing my best to remember. It's been more than a decade, almost 2 decades since I've done it. It's coming back. It's like riding a bike. Other than the press, there's not a whole lot of tools involved in this. We have our buckets. In this case, they're pears. That's, oh gosh, you probably want to know what kind of press it is. It's an old Italian press. I saw the name there. That's what it is. We need some sort of cutting surface because you're going to quarter your apples. You can chip them or grind them. I don't have a grinder. I just made up an apple squishing stick, and I have my apple squishing helper. You ready to apple squish? Darn right, we're ready to apple squish. All my buckets are lined up under this conveyor belt here to help kind of cut down on the number of wasps inside there. One bucket will be for the rotten nasty fruit. One bucket will be for the good stuff, and the squish bucket. This will be the squish bucket because it's in better shape. We're going to start quartering our things. There are some worms in there. That's the way life goes. Worm juice has long been a part of apple cider, and since we're going to let ours go hard, it'll be fine. It'll take care of it. You ready, buddy? These are by far the ripest of our pears. Some of them, you know, as far as eaten pears go, they're clearly overripe. But as long as they're not rotting, all that means is the starches have broken down, the sugars have come out. It'll boost the alcohol content because, you know, the yeast is going to feast on those sugars. We're fine with this. If you're asked for like a crisper cider, then you're going to have to throw in some little more starchy crab apples, and that'll get you a bit more crisp. Me, I'm after an alcoholic cider. This will work for me. Hey, can you bring me apples? All right, perfect. This one here, see, and then we go like that, and like that. Can you give me more? Okay. Now it's got a bad spot on it, so that gets cut off. Perfect, thank you. When you get a fair bit going, you want to put about 1/4 of a bucket in there. Get your apple squisher out. Start mashing them. You'll notice we upgraded our squisher. Something with some more heft. Fence post. But you'll also notice that we have done a fine job mushing up our pears here. That's getting pretty close. And if you can see it, there's standing pear juice at the bottom of the bucket. So this has done a good job. You want to set this aside and try to keep it clean. Now into the press goes some light gauzy material, and I picked this because making an apple cider should be pretty, right? This is wonderful here. This is going to screen it out. I remember as a child when my grandfather did it, he had a ring of stainless steel window screen, but that's long since disappeared. So we're going to go ahead and use this. That, along with many, many, many of its brethren going down the line, will then get crushed by the press head. When you put this in, you're going to want to make sure you got your catch basin already under spout, because you're just going to start dribbling juice pretty much from the moment it hits the bottom. I know, there's just too many bees over here. Once you got all your apples or your pears in there, go ahead and level out the top. Don't worry about the bees. They're just more juice. Now you'll probably find that while you've been doing this, your press has been leaking. And you might even find that you have some friends
who've joined you for a dip in the pool. So this bucket obviously needs to be dumped into our holding tank, but I'd prefer that they not go with it, and that's where the screen comes in. Oh yeah. Ah, you didn't get stung. It's okay. Okay, so now you're going to go ahead and fold in your cloth. You kind of form a bit of a sack in there. And your press should have two big press plates that fit down inside. And it should also have some other wooden blocks just to help you space out. You'll need more space than that, more blocks than that rather, but now at least you can begin putting on the press head. Alright, so the outer ring is high speed, low torque. The inner ring is low speed, high torque. Of olive oil on the moving parts, something that won't mess up the mechanism or our cider. And see what happens now. Get back, dog. Thank you, dear. Get your hands out of the way. Oh, there it goes. Little gusher. Little weir. And we're squeezing that mesh up through. I just think I think it's too fine. I think it's plugged with mash. We'll pull it out, save it in a bucket. It'll kind of ferment in the heat all day. And
what does it do to the pressure head or
the press?
Yeah.
Nothing. I don't think there's a thing you could do to this press. This press is a beast. Let's flip these around. Back off the pressure. There you go.
why did that happen?
Too much pressure on the head. Yep. Our cloth is too fine. It worked. I mean, we got almost 7 gallons of juice, more or less. Maybe even 8 by the time we're done here. So tomorrow we'll let this sit. We'll re-squeeze it when we get another gallon or so. Out of here. Oh, we got lucky. We just got lucky. It means that we could actually put quite a bit more pressure on this than we have. Because we should be able to lock those bad boys in there. This thing comes apart. In order to get those pressure heads loose. Look at that. Oh. There the hornets go crazy. Feel the heat in the center of this. See, we can remash this. Look at these. Some of these have not gotten mashed properly. We have 2 percolator buckets that I typically use. This is my main one, and I just have a regular lid and a bulkhead fitting there, and I connect it to my homemade water lock, which is simply a hose in a bucket of water. Alright, now in this cup here, I have about a cup of sugar, just to boost the sugar content so I can get a little more alcohol.
and I don't know, a teaspoon and a half of yeast. It will start on its own naturally, but I find it's better, especially if you're not going to pasteurize this stuff, to jumpstart that. Just get it producing the alcohol it needs to stay good. Just get it doing that as soon as possible. My bucket, you'll notice it's a drywall bucket. Yeah, you can relax. Basically, as long as it's food safe and never held pickles. And you just got to learn how to read the plastic triangle at the bottom of these things. Nothing toxic in drywall. I wouldn't use paint. I certainly wouldn't use oil. The only thing you can't use as far as food safe buckets is pickle buckets. You cannot recycle them or you'll end up with a bucket full of vinegar. Though one year we made 5 gallons of pear vinegar for our own amusement, and it is tasty stuff. Use it on salads and whatnot. So that goes in here. More or less it'll start the percolation almost immediately. Yeah, about 3 or 4 days. If it's nice and warm, it'll be done. Then you take it, put it down in the cellar, let it finish itself off, settle to the bottom. About a month and a half later, I'll decant it into glass jars, and then I'll put those on the shelf for a month or two, and then I'll decant those into whatever it is that I'm going to drink them out of. When I have too much, like I have today, I'll tap one of these. Normally these are my decanting jars, and they're the big ball pickle jars. You can pick them at a hardware store. They're actually quite cheap for how big they are. Don't make pickles in them. If you've made pickles in it, don't ever use it for this unless you want the vinegar. And so in order to keep it turning to vinegar, what you need to do is you got to keep those microbes, those ones that consume. The yeast produces alcohol, and then there's microbes in the air that'll consume the alcohol and excrete the vinegar. So you need to stop that. And so what I've done is I've wrapped a bag around the top, and this lid is loose. Otherwise, they'll build up pressure and explode, and that ought to be a mess. And so you notice I've crushed the top down. I've got a bunch of rubber bands here at the bottom. This will not seal and hold pressure, but it will seal and pressurize just a tiny bit, which will be more than enough to keep the outside air out. And that's all I want to do. I want to keep that out of my jugs. So it's better if they're filled to the tip top. Well, you know, with an inch or so. But this is fine. This is where we ran out of juice. So that's fine there. And it'll work the exact same way as our water lock system. It's maybe not quite as 100% secure. Clearly, air can never get back inside that system. But same thing goes on here. Here we are. Gosh, very quickly after I put it in. Less than a few hours. And we are already getting some good fermentation starting. So that's nice active yeast. You want to see that. You want this to go alcoholic quickly, just because, I mean, there's a lot of funk in there, and you don't want to. You want it alcoholic enough that it sterilizes itself, basically. Just like the old Egyptians in their beer. You can drink water with poop in it, as long as you turn it into beer first. And that is how we make hard cider. So it was quite fun to drag out that old press rather than the juicer for the first time in decades. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.